Right now, we're going to jump on the Rude Guest Hotline, talk to our friend Mr. Mitch Tischler from the Beltway Football Podcast.
We got Rude Mitch on Rude Hotline?
I think Mitch is generally jovial. Mitch, how would you describe yourself?
Unless you see Uncle Don.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Mitch gets heated when Uncle Don's around.
As long as you're not kidney punching me, JP, we're all happy. We're in a good mood. We're happy to go. You guys set the mood with the great music running in. I was dancing over here with it.
Love it.
We wish we had a camera on you.
Yeah, we need to get a camera on you.
I might know someone that can make that happen.
I feel like you do. Dude, so I want to start here. We had this conversation for like an hour. People called in. There's a lot of talk about Brandon Ayuk, and there was last year too. Last year was a very different conversation. Oh, could the Niners trade him? What might happen? He ends up signing. He gets hurt. So here's what we know. Alec Pierce slated for free agency. He could work out a deal with the Colts. He could get tagged, but Alec Pierce appears to be the top receiver candidate slated for free agency. We've also got Tyreek Hill is going to be available, and then Brandon Ayuk presumably is going to be available. Where do you land on those three dudes?
I'm not that high on going big on a free agent wide receiver. Certainly, I would be interested if Brandon Ayuk was willing to sign a little bit more of a show me deal or an incentive laden deal there. I think you can look at his relationship with Jaden Daniels in one of two ways, whether it could impact Jaden in a bad way, or whether Jaden could kind of lift up Ayuk and get him to recommit to football or be more interested in committing himself to football, because we've seen the way that Jaden is able to be around his teammates and how he's able to, get the most out of them. As far as Pierce and Tyreek Hill go, I really like Alec Pierce, and I think that he could add a lot to what Washington needs, which is, the vertical threat. Tyreek Hill, I think at this point in the middle of February, there's too many questions about that knee injury. I mean, being 30 plus and coming back from a major knee injury, is he going to have the elite speed and the elite cutting ability that he once had? If the answer is that it's even a tick lower than it was, then absolutely not, particularly considering how much it's going to cost.
We all been around football a very long time here, and it's hard for anybody to navigate themselves through this game of football. I don't think I want to add someone that I got to incorporate my quarterback to have to navigate somebody else through it as well. I understand quarterbacks are leaders and this, that, and the other, but it shouldn't have to be where you have to make sure somebody has a love for something, want to be interested in it again. If they don't already automatically have that's where my problem come in with this whole thing. So yeah. I'm with you. If he goes with a small deal, incentive laden, I'm cool with that.
I also think a lot of it, some of it will fall certainly on Jaden's shoulders as a leader of the team and the coaching staff and all that. I think we also have to remember the guy who leads that wide receiver room, Terry McLaurin, who has been, a good leader for this Commanders team since, basically since he got here, since he's, grown up in the franchise. And you think about, the way that he goes about his work on a day-to-day basis and the way that he, holds folks accountable. We heard last year a lot from, Luke and Jalen Lane about, Terry working with him and getting details down. I think that leadership in the what you want to kind of, and this is all assuming that, the Ayuk thing isn't 49ers specific related. And, as if he goes somewhere else, he gets back to being the football player that he was. I just think there are a lot of questions, and it's a big decision that this front office and coaching staff need to make.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Talking with our friend Mitch Tischler here on the Rude Guest Hotline, RUUD, the best HVAC equipment in the DMV. You can give Mitch a follow at Mitch_Tischler, Tischler. I think you, like most people that study the team closely, are far more concerned on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side. The top name available currently in free agency is Trey Hendrickson. Where are you on Washington pursuing Hendrickson?
I like the idea of going after Hendrickson. I think, like anything else, it's going to depend on what kind of deal he's looking for. If we're talking about, 2 years, $55 million or something like that, a little bit of a short-term deal, I'd be kind of on board with that. And I know That's the total antithesis to, getting younger, faster,
Right.
stronger, all those things. However, there are a couple of young guys that are out there that this team could pair him with and, sign two kind of edge rushers in that draft. And Boye Mafe and K'Lavon Chason are two guys that I think could be really interesting players who are coming off of, their rookie deals and kind of fit that idea of getting younger, faster, stronger. And to me, if you're able to lock up two pretty big defensive edge rushers in the draft, you can talk about, in free agency, you can talk about, the combination of having Dorrance Armstrong and bringing back Jacob Martin and having that kind of edge rusher group more solidified. And that would open up a whole lot of things for the draft at 7 for them if they end up going that way.
The Hendrickson thing is really difficult because you got to balance what they've done now for 2 years with the older veteran players and the need to get younger. But, can you add other youth and sign Hendrickson? You know what I mean? Like if you look at what New England did, they were very aggressive in free agency last year. And it wasn't just young dudes. It was young dudes, but they also brought in, Morgan Moses. You can still bring in veterans if you're confident they can get the job done.
The question would be, will Henderson have enough, attention from other people too, to where that price is going to fit within your budget?
I would argue the Commanders' budget is about as big as anyone's in the NFL, particularly once some of these cuts start coming down. They're going to have a whole lot of money to spend.
But they needed a whole lot more players too.
Certainly, and that's kind of where you have to find the balance. You want this front office I want them to target who their top guys are and essentially not get beat out on that guy. If it's Trey Hendrickson, you got the money to spend, go spend on it. If it's if it's somebody else, if Jalen Phillips somehow gets out of Philly, I think that obviously he's a guy that you'd go all in for. I don't want them to get beat out over $1 or $2 or $3 million when it all comes down to it.
You worried about the Phillips injury history?
Certainly some. It's hard to balance a guy that young who has that much success when he's on the field with the fact that he hasn't been on the field all the time. You have Adafe Owe who's going to be possibly available. I don't know if the Chargers have a bunch of money; they might re-sign him as well. The edge free agency class this year feels pretty strong, and I think it is a good opportunity for the Commanders to really put a dent in a position that has largely been overlooked.
Yeah, dude, we were trying to talk about it. If you had to name your front four right now, and we'll say DA's healthy, so you got Armstrong, Kinlaw, Payne. Who would you even say is on the other side?
Martin.
JP, it's not how you line up; it's how you end up, right?
Yeah.
Martin.
Yeah, Jacob Martin's also a free agent.
Yeah.
But he's not under contract.
Yeah. Well, somebody in the draft.
If it's today, it's John Baptiste, right?
Also coming back from injury.
Yeah, if he's healthy, but they don't have a whole lot of names there. Maybe Johnny Newton in this defense gets moved closer to an edge rusher than an inside guy.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a very interesting situation, to say the least. We're a week now removed from David Blau and Durante Jones getting introduced with the benefit of some time and some hindsight. What do you think was the most important thing we heard from those fellas last week?
When we talked about it on Beltway Football Pod, you kind of talked about how DBs have for years talked about communication and all that stuff, and certainly that's been an issue in Washington and probably elsewhere also, but specifically to us around here. I love hearing Durante Jones talk about wanting to learn how his players learn best, whether it's through video, whether it's through on-field practice, whether it's through still shots, whatever it may be. To me, it showed an openness to wanting to meet a player where they are and help them learn. I think the biggest issue in the previous regime, with Witt, and obviously when Quinn took over, it was much later, but for Witt was his inability to really teach these guys what he wanted, because it's one thing in play to have a miscommunication as to, who's supposed to go where, but to me, too often at the line of scrimmage as the ball was being snapped, you had guys heads turned, talking to each other, not knowing where to go. So I really liked hearing Durante talk about how he wants to meet these players where they are, and hopefully he's able to get through to them and teach his philosophies in a much more, in a much more effective way.
Yeah. Durante, just the vibe of talking with him and hanging with him a little, it's very different than Joe Witt. I liked Joe, the person, but Joe was just a very straightforward, top-down, linear approach, I would say. And Durante just standing around. I mean, you know how television interviews go. You have a couple minutes kind of before and after while people are setting up mics and lights, and you just kind of BSing. And he is a guy that, like, you feel like you could. He's one of those dudes where if you sat down next to him at the airport bar, you'd have an awesome conversation for 45 minutes. You know what I mean?
If you look at it, though, if he has any semblance of what Flores runs, it's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to these players having to really understand this stuff. And I think he has to start off from day one with that mindset that, listen, you don't learn your crap, you're not getting on the field. Just hands down, because they do a lot of stuff compared to what we was looking at, and they still didn't figure it out.
Big man, we got to run here, brother. Thank you for the time. We'll catch up this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, bud.
All right, bro.
It's our guy, Mitch Tischler. Give him a follow at Mitch_Tischler, Tischler.